When we say Mohammed with a little girl, we have mountains of evidence. We're not misrepresenting anything. We're quoting your most trusted sources. Just want to point that out because we're about to see how Mohammed Hijab tries to defend his claim that Abraham and Isaac were disgusting. Champion of Dawah, and his fans, again, love it. I believe he could step out tomorrow and say, Abraham worshiped the devil! And make some stupid case for it, and his fans would cheer him on. They just don't care. They just don't care. At the end of the day, they only care about Muhammad. They don't care about anything else. Let's go ahead and check out what got this all started. He said, Aisha, according to us, was 3 times older than Rebecca, according to Genesis. So Aisha was 9. Mohammed Hijab acknowledges that. And therefore, Rebecca would be 3, according to Mohammed Hijab. Matter of fact, according to Genesis, according to what he's saying. And then Luciano says, correctly, not a single verse in Genesis mentions her age. And then we have age, and then we have the math. Gotta love Dawah math here, ladies and gentlemen. Except, guys, they all cut and paste this same thing. This is not Hijab coming up with this. They all cut and paste the same little thing. You can find it all over the place. Once you know where the lie occurs, then it's easy to expose. Mohammed Hijab says, Sarah gave birth to Isaac at 90. Genesis 17. You have to watch Dawah guys when they give sources because they give sources just to pretend. They give sources hoping that you will never look up the sources. And matter of fact, knowing that their followers will never in 100 million years look up sources, right? Sarah gave birth to Isaac at 90, Genesis 17. She died at 127, Genesis 23, 1-3, meaning Isaac was 37 when she passed. We're trying to establish a timeline here. So Isaac was 37 when Sarah died. The Mount Moriah incident, Genesis 22, and the birth of Rebekah occurred simultaneously, aligning with Sarah's death. That's the lie. There's nothing at all in Genesis 22 that says the birth of Rebekah, the Mount Moriah incident, and Sarah's death all occurred simultaneously. All it says is Abraham heard about all the people who've been born since he's left. One of those people was Rebecca. It lists a bunch of other people. In other words, Abraham had left home way earlier, and he finally got news from home, and he hears about all his relatives that had been born. And they say, oh, right there when he heard it, that's when all of these people must have been born right at that second. That is insane. That is absurd. It's not what the text says at all. And without that lie, you can't get Rebecca was 3. And therefore, Rebecca was born when Isaac was 37. Isaac married Rebekah at 40, Genesis 25:20, making her no older than 3, perhaps slightly older, like 3 years and 1 month, depending on how you interpret Nahor's family timeline, Genesis 22, 20-24. Genesis presents the details, the math reveals the implications. You guys get that? Genesis presents the details, the math reveals the implications. Only problem is, Genesis does not say this. It's a lie. And his math is based upon a lie. But he knows his followers are too stupid. He knows that when we expose the lie, his followers will just believe him because they're programmed to. Brother Rashid says, do you really believe that a 3-year-old girl could draw water from a well, pour it into a jar, and carry it on her shoulders? And by the way, it's not just like 1 jar of water. She watered 10 camels. She watered 10 camels, a 3-year-old. A jar back then would have been like a big clay jar. You lower it down in this well, fill it with water, and then you haul this thing up. And she kept doing that for 10 camels. 3-year-old, very impressive 3-year-old. Abraham's brother Nahor. The woman was very beautiful. Woman? Wait a minute, I thought 3-year-old girl. Filled her jar, came up again. Servant hurried to meet her. Please give me a little water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. After she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too. And then she drew all the water for the camels. And so you have someone giving, this is Mohammed Hijab's idea of Rebecca. In reality, Genesis never gives an age for Rebecca. The only indication it gives is she's called a woman or a maiden or young woman. It said that she's a virgin and she's in charge of the chores of getting water and stuff in the water jar. And she does things like water the camels and so on. That's it. That's it. That's what you have to go on as far as the Bible is concerned. So when we ask, is this correct that you could do the math here and get an age of 3 for Rebecca? The answer is no. And I went ahead and pointed that out. So let's go ahead and get back here.
Please, man. Is this a joke?
I said, took me 2 seconds to spot the lie from Mohammed Hijab. Note, Dawah is always deception. Hijab says, the Mount Moriah incident, Genesis 22, and the birth of Rebekah occurred simultaneously, aligning with Sarah's death. It occurred simultaneously, aligning with Sarah's death. Liar. It's a Dawah lie. Text doesn't say that at all. Muslim, and look at the challenge. I called on 2 billion Muslims. Prove me wrong here. Muslims, prove me wrong by quoting the verse that says the birth of Rebecca occurred at the same time as the Mount Moriah incident. When you can't, ask yourself, I'm telling them you should be a little bit self-reflective in all this. You're falsely accusing prophets that you claim to respect of being, and you love it. So why don't you reflect back on this sort of thing? When you can't, ask yourself why your Dawa heroes gladly lie about God's prophets when they claim to respect them. And without Hijab's lie here, his math doesn't work. Keep in mind, this is a popular Muslim accusing Prophet Abraham of sending his servant to find a 3-year-old girl for his son Isaac. They claim to respect prophets, but they lie about them and accuse them, all to distract people from Muhammad, who actually had a 9-year-old girl and who is therefore an actual shielding by lying about prophets. Dawah is demonic. Don't tell us to respect your book, your fake prophet, or your religion when your book, your fake prophet, and your religion cause you to act like this. It's all pretty straightforward, right? Is that too much to ask, ladies and gentlemen? Now let's go ahead and look at Hijab's response. You ready? You ready, guys? And he didn't even try. He didn't even try to show from Genesis. Instead, he went to 2 rabbis. He went to 2 rabbis. And this is about to get hilarious because it's IP, Inspiring Philosophy, who absolutely demolished Hijab on this one. I mean, absolutely demolished him on this one. So look at what Hijab says here. So what was the challenge? Hey, Hijab, you just said that this is in Genesis. Show us, chapter and verse. Where does it say that? And here's his response. Here are some scholarly sources you can read that indicate Rebecca was 3. Scholarly sources, ladies and gentlemen. He says, 2 rabbis. So here we go. Rashi's commentary on Genesis 25:20 says, 40 years old. For when Abraham came from Mount Moriah, he was informed that Rebekah had been born. Isaac was 37 years old, for at that time Sarah died, and from that time that Isaac was born until the binding of Isaac when Sarah died were 37 years, for she was 90 years old when Isaac was born, and 127 when she died, as it is stated above 23:1. The life of Sarah was 127 years. This makes Isaac 37 years old, and at that time Rebekah was born. There's the problem. At that time Rebekah was born. Where's that coming from? It's not in the Bible. It doesn't say it. So am I supposed to believe this when it's saying something that's false? Do you get that? This is making a false claim. The Bible does not say that. And Hijab is saying, I have to believe it anyway. Why? Why do I have to believe this? Why? It's saying something false. And guess what? Other rabbis called him out for this. Other rabbis called him out and said, that's not what it says. So anyway, this makes Isaac 37 years old, and at that time, Rebekah was born. He waited for her until she would be fit for marital relations 3 years and then married her. From Genesis Rabbah 57:1. Keep in mind, guys, Genesis Rabbah is not the Bible. That's not the Bible. Isaac was 37 years old at his binding. When Abraham returned from Mount Moriah, at that very moment Sarah died, and Isaac was then 37. And at that very time, Abraham was told of Rebekah's birth. Look at that. Look what just happened. At that very time, Abraham was told of Rebekah's birth. At that very time, Abraham was told of a ton of people's births. He was told about a bunch of people. Do you conclude, therefore, that's when all these people were born? No, yes. That would be absolutely ridiculous. But since this guy says it, Hijab tells us we have to believe it. Thus, we find that Rebekah was 3 years old when she married Isaac. Interesting. You want to know interesting? Look at this. Look at what Hijab originally posted. Genesis presents the details. The math reveals the implications. So it's just Genesis and math, right? And he used Genesis as the source until I pointed out that Genesis said no such thing. When I proved that it's not Genesis and not math, he changed his argument and now tells us that we have to trust rabbis who also can't show us that the text says it. I could give him Muslim commentaries on various issues in Islam, and he would reject those commentaries because he doesn't agree with their reasoning. In other words, I could show him a Muslim scholar. If Hijab looks at that and says, well, this guy's reasoning is bad, he'll say, I'm not going to agree with him. Why? You don't have to agree with a Muslim scholar if you think his reasoning is bad. And that's people from his own religion. Him saying, David, you have to go with what this rabbi said, that's really, really weird. But let's see. But he turns to us, and when he can't prove his point from the Bible, he tells us that we have to agree with rabbis from thousands of years after the events who can't give anything remotely resembling a sound argument. They're not. There's no argument saying that she was born at this same time. It's just they just say it. Why does he tell us we have to agree with these rabbis? Because he needs it so he can accuse Prophet Abraham and Prophet Isaac of conspiring 3-year-old. This is the true face of Islam. They pretend to love the prophets, but lie about them and falsely accuse them of being. Dawah is demonic, and Mohammed Hijab is proving it. Here's Inspiring Philosophy's response, ladies and gentlemen. This is cherry-picking Mohammed Hijab. You're ignoring that other rabbis disagreed with Rashi and argued Rebecca was 14. And I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, 14 fits way better given the description of her. But even that, you don't have enough to make an accurate conclusion of her age because you do not know how old she was in Genesis 22. It just says this is when Abraham heard that a bunch of people had been born. How long had they been around already? Some of them had been around for decades. So you just don't know. It's like Mary in the Bible. It doesn't give an age for her. So all you have to kind of go on is speculation that, well, you know, she's a young woman or something like that. So that's all you have to go on. This is cherry-picking Mohammed Hijab. You are ignoring that other rabbis disagreed with Rashi and argued Rebecca was 14. Rashi's comment on this apparently historically irrelevant detail is that the Torah informed us that Yitzhak, after marrying Rivka, waited for 3 years until she was old enough and become pregnant, 14 years old. In his commentary on Genesis 24:16, item 91, Rabbi Kasher, in his Torah Shlema, deals at length with the conflicting opinions about Rivka, that's Rebecca, with the conflicting opinions about Rivka's age at marriage. So there are conflicting opinions. Sifri, on Deuteronomy 34:7, claims that Rivka lived to the age of 133 years, same as that of Kehat, son of Levi. Our author calculates that if Rivka had only been 3 years at the time when she was married, that the calculation would be wrong by 11 years. He proceeds to give details tracing the various ages of our patriarchs and matriarchs down to the birth of Kehat. He also understands the Midrash, according to which Abraham heard about the fact that Bethuel had fathered Rivka as not meaning that this had occurred at the same time as the Akedah, but that Abraham had belatedly heard about this. Yeah, because that's what the text says. It just says he heard news from home. As proof that Rivka could not have been only 3 years when Eliezer met her, he cites the fact that her brother and mother referred to her as that would be a maiden or young woman, a term never applied to someone younger than 12 and a half years of age. Did you catch that? The term used of her, which would usually be translated as maiden or young woman, is never applied to someone younger than 12 and a half years of age. And then you have, however, the rabbis were simply wrong. There's nothing in Genesis 22 or 23 that says Rebecca was born the year Sarah died. The rabbis were creative and read that into the text. We simply do not know how old she was when she married Isaac. Stop cherry-picking sources to push this bad argument. Ouch.